I do not own the rights to this music. Hello, and welcome to Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron. Sunday School lesson for Sunday, March the 6th, 2022. Our reference material for the Sunday School Summary is based upon the International Sunday School Lesson Series as published by the Sunday School Publishing Board. We are discussing God Frees and Redeems as the title of the Spring Lesson Series, which is categorized into 3 units or groups of lessons. In Unit 1, we're talking about liberating Passover, and it's 4 lessons that explores the memory of the liberating events of the Exodus. God Frees and Redeems series focuses on the lens of liberation, Christian freedom, through Christian freedom to examine and experience the nature of God who acts to deliver and free people in different situations. The title of our first lesson in the Unit 1 Spring Lesson Series is titled The Resources to Rebuild. The Resources to Rebuild. And the resources to rebuild we're talking about is the rebuilding of the temple at Jerusalem after the exile. The key verse comes from Ezra chapter 2, verse 68, which reads, "Some of the chief of the fathers, when they came to the house of the Lord, which is at Jerusalem, offered freely for the house of God to set it up in his place." So the chief priests offered free will offerings after they had arrived in Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. Now, the background to today's lesson is the resources to rebuild, and scripturally comes from the Old Testament book of Ezra, which records the return of the Jews to Jerusalem from Babylonian captivity in exile. Now, Cyrus is the king of Persia, and he has defeated the Babylonian Empire, and now the Jews in exile are under the rule of King Cyrus. So God spoke to the heart and the spirit of King Cyrus, and he worked through the king to bring the prophecy of Jeremiah to fruition, whereby God had promised to the nation of Israel to bring the people back to Israel after 7 years in exile and captivity, which brings us to today's lesson. 2 summary lesson points for today: preparing the house of God from Ezra chapter 1, verses 1 through 8 and 11, and 2, praise in the house of God from Ezra chapter 2, verses 64 through 70. Now, the passages for the lesson today revolve around the key words of faith and proclamation. Now, faith is the complete trust, assurance, belief, or confidence in God. And the children of Israel in exile had faith in the prophecy that they would be returned to Jerusalem, which is in our lesson today. Proclamation, it's an official and publicly declared action or law. And in today's lesson, it is King Cyrus's proclamation on the Jewish return to Jerusalem and the building of the temple. Now, the first summary point, preparing the house of God from Ezra chapter 1, verses 1 through 8 and 11. And these passages read that in the first year of the reign of King Cyrus of Persia over Babylon, that the Lord spoke to the heart and mind of King Cyrus. And he decided to send this message or proclamation to everyone who lived in the kingdom. And his message was that God had given him power over all the kingdoms on earth. And Cyrus the king also said that any of God's people who lived among his subjects were now allowed to return to Jerusalem, and he prayed for safe passage for them. He said that the Lord had told them they should rebuild the temple for the Lord, or Israel's God, and he is the God whose home is in Jerusalem. And the places where some of the Israelites who want to return, their neighbors must help them with gifts, and they should give them silver, gold, and other things for their journey. And also they should give them animals, and they may also give them special gifts for God's temple that is in Jerusalem. Also, in response to King Cyrus's proclamation, the leaders of the family of Judah, including Benjamin, prepared to return to Jerusalem. So they accepted the responsibility or the call from King Cyrus to go to Jerusalem and build or rebuild the temple. And these were also the priests and the Levites who also decided to go. So God had put a thought in the minds of all these people that they should go and prepare the second rebuilding of the temple at Jerusalem for worship. Also, King Cyrus also brought the valuable gifts that King Nebuchadnezzar had taken when he had sacked Jerusalem. And he had taken these Jewish items of worship and placed them in his temple, the temple of his gods in Babylon. So King Cyrus also returned those items to the children of Israel in exile as they prepared to embark on their journey. Also, the king had his servant, or the head of his treasury, which was Mithradam, who was the officer who took care of all of Persia's riches. And he counted the things that he gave, and he gave them to Sheshbazzar, the leader of Judah's people. There were 5,400 items that were accounted for, and these items consisted of gold and silver. And Sheshbazzar took the items with him when he left Babylon to return to Jerusalem with the other exiles. So King Cyrus of Persia was very instrumental in delivering the children of Israel to satisfy the prophecy of God. He provided them with funds from the public treasury, and he also encouraged others to promote and support the journey to Jerusalem and the rebuilding of the temple. So God works in mysterious ways. He was working through someone who did not understand his God or may not practice the God of Israel, but he delivered them through that individual. So sometimes God can use unusual people to deliver his message. The second summary point is the praise in the house of God. And that comes from Ezra chapter 2, verses 64 through 70. And this records the scene as they arrived in Jerusalem. And according to Ezra, there were 42,320 people that were returned to Jerusalem in the congregation. And including in that number were 7,337 male and female servants, as well as 200 male and female singers. And it also goes on to account for the number of animals that were in the journey, which carried the items, the pack animals. It said there were 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 6,720 donkeys. Now, most of these were pack animals, so it meant that the children of Israel, upon their return from exile, were truly blessed by the Lord with the resources necessary to rebuild the kingdom. And they were praising as they went along their way and when they arrived in Jerusalem. They were so grateful that they each gave as much money as they were able to give. And together they gave about 500 kilos of gold and nearly 3,000 kilos of silver, which in today's dollars would be between $35 million. They also gave 100 special sets of clothes for the priests. So the priests, the Levites, the singers, the temple guards, and other workers lived in their towns near Jerusalem. And the other Israelites went to live in the towns where their ancestors had lived. So the message is that the unifying power of God to accomplish his goals is unknowable and unimaginable, that everyone gave according to their abilities. So they did not rely on one or two people, but everyone can contribute. And we should keep that in mind, that everyone has an opportunity to contribute. Your contribution may be different than mine, but in the eyes of the Lord, all that matters is that I contribute to his glory. This is Brother Ron with the Sunday School Summary for Sunday, March the 6th, 2022. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed week, and we hope to see you next Sunday for another edition of Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron.